Hello and welcome to Trying Times. My name's Carmen, and if you're new here, I just want to say welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. I hope you're having a wonderful day or night whenever you're listening to this. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I genuinely appreciate you, and I'm so excited to share a very, very special episode with you today. In this episode, I catch up with a really, really great friend who has always shared a really special perspective on life. And she is someone who genuinely always inspires me to think bigger, see things in a brighter way, and always just opens up my perspective to be a lot more welcoming than it can be sometimes. Because I think without realizing it, sometimes we can close ourselves off a bit. This is a friend who helps me really remember to just try all the things, be open minded, but also know when to reel it in and be grounded in myself. So she's someone who's very, very special. I cannot wait for you guys to hear more in this episode. So I won't prolong this. We'll get right into it. So without further ado, I really hope you enjoy this episode with my good friend Brittny. I am so excited to introduce this guest that I have on this episode. Her name's Brittny. Brittny is literally one of the most accepting and calming people I think I've ever met. And hearing that at first, you're probably just like, what the hell does that mean? Well, it just goes to say that she's an incredibly kind and soulful person who I feel really lucky to know and have an abundance of really, really open conversations with. So, hi, Brittny.
Hello. Such
I
kind words. Oh my God.
It's just all the truth. It's all literally who you are.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Oh,
Thank you.
I appreciate you. Basically, a little bit before we get into the episode,
Hmm.
just want to recap how we met because
Yes.
we met generally in a very transformative time in our lives, I would say, because we met in university. It's kind of a time where everyone's just really figuring everything out.
Yep. Yep. 20 somethings,
Yep.
late teens, 20 somethings. Yep. Those were very trying times.
I love
Literally,
that.
though. Oh my God. It was, oh Lord.
It was so interesting, but I just
It
feel
was.
very lucky in the sense where through our experience, obviously we got to learn more about one another and our work styles, not only through school, but later on through working together
Yes.
after school had ended through a
Yes.
really, really cool collective that you put together. And from that moment on, I just kind of knew I was like, this girl is going to be the person I know I can talk to about really anything without any judgment.
Yes.
So it's just, again, I feel very fortunate to know you. You are, like I mentioned, one of the probably most peaceful and grounded people I know. And I so badly wanted to have you on Trying Times to have one of our many, many conversations in a shared space where you could just share some of your wisdom and have that be able to resonate with someone out there. So, again, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to Trying Times.
Thank you so much for having me. I remember the first time you told me that you started this, and I was so excited for you. So I never thought we would get to this opportunity. It's been like, what, a year? More than a year now that you've
Yeah,
been doing this. So I'm very happy to have that opportunity to be on your 64th episode. Holy crap.
that's a
That's a
lot
big
of
deal.
yapping. Thank
A
you.
good, educational, enlightening yapping. Don't worry about that.
Very honest and
Yes,
unfiltered yapping for
as
sure.
it should
For
be.
sure.
As it should be, the best
Oh,
kind. So
thank you so
thank
much.
you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm very
Of
happy to be
course.
here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And this
Yeah.
episode specifically is going to be about a lot of different things, but I really, really want to start with this idea of peace and finding this within yourself. Like I said, you are probably one of the most grounded people I know. Even if you're going through a hurricane of some sort, you would literally never be able to tell on the outside. And I genuinely admire that so much. So I want to ask in today's world, day and age, however you want to put that, I feel like it can just be really hard to ground yourself and feel a moment of calmness, even. So, what does that really mean for you? And how does that look in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, so it's funny. The hurricanes always happening, chaos is always happening internally as well as externally. But I think, yeah, I find the best way I can to not show that, even though I'm feeling that, even though when everybody else is feeling that, I don't want to represent that. So I think it's probably because of my sign. I'm a Libra. So we're always trying to keep the peace, keep the balance,
Oh,
keep
okay.
everything diplomatic, justice. You want to keep
Oh,
calm and we
all
want to
right.
carry on. So I find that it's probably because of my sign or
Mm-hmm.
just me. I just like to not be in the chaos. Like you're always going to be in the chaos, but not be fully immersed into the chaos and just take it all over. So maintaining that equilibrium, I think for me is just not going too far left or too far right, feeling comfortable in like gray areas of like not really wondering or worrying about so much why is this happening, but what can you kind of learn from this? Like what's the lesson or what's the disguised blessing here is kind of how I try to maintain my peace as best as possible because you kind of don't want to be worried about the problems that you're experiencing all the time. It's more so not just solutions, but just, being calm and neutral as best as possible. Definitely keeping the peace for me is just reminding how far I've come as well too. The hardships that you've experienced in life, just thinking back about how long it took for you to transition or even just like that feeling of like, oh, remember when you were going through all of that? Like look how far you've come with that, look where you are at now, helps
Yeah.
me kind of maintain my peace because it's just always being grounded, being in the moment, being present as well, not really worried about what's going to happen in the future, just kind of taking it one day at a time is a best way that I like to keep my peace. And then that balance for me, you kind of just don't want to be wavering too much and just making sure that you're being grounded in anything that you're doing, being in that moment as best as possible and just taking it as life throws things at you. It's definitely a juggling act, but a lot of the jugglers that you see, they're very happy when they're doing it. So it's kind of like using your life like that, like having fun with it, not taking things too seriously. Try to do that as much as well too. Definitely a dramatic person, so I do have my 5 seconds to freak out to be like, what the hell is going on? Or 5 minutes, not just 5 seconds, but I
Yep.
definitely take that moment to, feel it for what
Mm-hmm.
it is, especially if things are not going the way that you planned or what you expected. Definitely taking it and experiencing it in that moment and then just letting it go and just allowing yourself to kind of realign and keep taking those steps is kind of what I do in terms of like keeping the peace or like being grounded or anything like that. So,
Okay,
yeah.
I gotta say, I really like the whole analogy you used of juggling because I don't know, I feel like that's just such a good way to look at it because it's true. Anytime you do see anyone juggling, they're just so happy doing it, even though they are doing so much in every single moving second.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I'm very much the type of person who it's so easy for me to look at like a list of things I need to do. Or overall, like think about all the things I need to do. And then I'm immediately like, okay, let me write this down to organize those thoughts. Like,
Hmm.
how can I make this feel a little bit better? But then you're sitting there, for me at least, and looking at this list, and I'm like, I don't feel any better. Like, I actually feel just as bad as before. It's just, it's
Exactly.
organized chaos, but it's like, oh my God, I don't know. So I'm going to keep that juggling analogy in my back pocket because I loved that.
And even with the juggling, as you can see, like the way that they start off with two, they start
Hmm.
off with three, then they start to build. And just like with that list that you're talking about, okay, great. You've built your list, you know what you need to do. Don't get overwhelmed about how you're going to do it or when it's going to get done. Take it
Hmm.
in bite-sized pieces, and you'll know that that list will be broken down and there will be nothing on that list when the time comes. So I
Yeah.
think that as well too, that it's something to keep in mind. You don't have to finish it all at once. Things will always get done at the time
Okay.
that it's supposed to get done. And you always just take it in digestible pieces because life is not a race, it's not a marathon. Things are
No.
still happening in the background and you don't want to burn out. So it's
Yeah.
definitely keeping that pace is what will make you keep the peace as well too, because you're like you're taking
Oh,
those right steps, right? So it's like
yeah.
yeah, it's you when you're juggling, you're having fun with it, but you're also being mindful of what you have in your hands. You're compartmentalizing. You know what's coming next, but you're not getting overwhelmed about that either. So
Hmm.
that's kind of just like, if you know what you're doing, you have that list, you know what you want to get done, and
Hmm.
you know that you're gonna get it done as time goes on, and you'll figure out how to get it done as well too. But it's
Yeah.
not like you're gonna get all those answers at once. So it just makes no sense to work yourself up about things that you don't have all the answers to at that moment. So,
No, that's honestly so
yeah.
true. And it's very much something I think I'm starting to practice and learn a little bit more. But it is
Yes.
really easy, I think, when you're someone that which we talk about a little bit sometimes, like in our own time too. And when you're someone who's very much like fixated on things going a certain way or have
Hmm.
that perfectionist tendency, even like
Yep.
it's so quick and easy to just hop into, okay, I need this and this and this. And then, like you said, it's very, very simple to forget. It's not a race. Like just take everything one pace
Yeah.
at a time.
Yep.
Wow.
We have so much time. And it's again, I feel like a lot of things happen in dualities. It's a yin to the yang. So you have so much time, but you don't have that much time. You know what I mean? Like you're always dancing, it's always a push and pull. So it's kind of like instead of you getting lost in that sauce of like, oh, it's this, it's that, it's just let it be. Like just sit in that gray and then it's kind of like, yeah, at the end of the day, things are going to come up and you kind of just have to work with it as best as you can. So it's like you gotta
Don't stress it.
keep it, yeah,
Yeah.
let
Yeah.
it go, let God, let whoever deal with it. You don't have the energy. You don't have the energy for
We
that.
don't have the time
Okay? We
for
don't have the
this.
time for that. There's things that are happening. Things are moving. Good things are moving.
Well, going off of that a little bit, are there just in this idea of like keeping a pace and being very mindful as you're doing tasks or whatever maybe that you're taking on, are there any sort of daily practices or even tasks that are like a must-have for you or that you would recommend that allow you to be in a more mindful and calm state?
Yes. Well, for me, I have a lot, a lot of anxieties. But for me, it's a lot of my mind is going a mile a minute and
Mm,
it's moving faster than my body. So a lot of that anxiousness, I have to work on breathing techniques. I
mhm.
find really help like in the moment, just, taking a step back and just breathing, grounding yourself. I've been doing that a lot, especially with work. Kind of want to take that moment to not get fully consumed into what you're doing because at the end of the day, you're still a human being and you still need to make sure things are still calm, cool, and collected. So yeah, I think breathing techniques is kind of the one thing that I use to regain control of my mind and my body. Meditation, I try to do that.
Ooh.
I'm not consistent with it because again, it's really hard to quiet your mind, but I do find that when I do get to do it, it's a really inspiring and really insightful moment to
Mhm.
kind of keep things in good working condition in terms of like your mentality, because that's kind of how the best way that you can learn to control it when you're able to calm all those noise in your head.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Journaling, I like sometimes I do more so gratitude ones.
Oh, I
Yeah, I
love
like
that.
to,
Okay.
yes, I journaling my thoughts is kind of hard.
Mhm.
I like to talk more so than I like to write. So a bit
It is
hard.
easier when you really sit down to
Yes,
start writing, as someone
yes,
who also likes to just like talk and talk and talk. You
exactly.
think you'd sit down and it would be
Be
easy,
able to
but
write. Yeah,
somehow it's just, it
it's
doesn't come out
not.
the same way. It doesn't
It's
translate.
not. It's like the words are hard to put on the paper, whereas like the good alternative to that would most likely be like, what do you call it? When you voice record yourself, like do
Yeah.
a voice journaling.
Hmm.
But more so when it comes to the journaling, I do gratitude. So I'll just do like list of things that I'm grateful for, especially if I'm in like one of those moments where I'm just like thinking, oh, nothing's going well for me, or like what's happening right now? Like, why is everything so static? Why is
Hmm.
nothing moving? Like, I think I kind of just break that list out and start listing things like, okay, what about all these things that are great or that you still have or that is actually providing you more fulfillment than what you are currently feeling iffy about. So there's a lot of that. And I usually, especially like I would say 2020 is when I started to do yearly, what do you call it? Yearly acknowledgments. So I would kind of like go over the year
Okay.
just to kind of, yeah, get a gathering of like all the stuff that I did and the lessons that I've learned and the things that I've experienced, just to,
Okay.
yeah, get a capture of the year. I've done that probably like three, yeah, since 2020, 2021. I've done one for each year. And I find that reading those back in the moments of where things are like, as I said, really hard or just like what's really going on, it just reminds you of how far you've come and just to think about how you felt in those moments when things weren't going right to kind of
Hmm.
keep that still in the back of your mind so you know kind of how to navigate that in the future or currently when you're feeling it. So those are kind of cool that I like to do.
That.
Those are kind of like, yeah, my favorites I would say that I kind of dabble in the most. And affirmations. I know that's a
Oh,
weird one. I know people find it
not at all.
kind of,
No.
well, I know a lot of people find it weird in the sense of talking to yourself or like talking
Gotcha.
positive to yourself.
Hmm.
I know it's a very weird, uncomfortable thing for people to do to themselves because of the negative self-talk that we have in our head. So I
Yeah.
know that's kind of the weirdness that I'm talking about because I find it so weird to be like, oh my gosh, like you're smart, you're beautiful,
Yeah.
like, or today's gonna be a great day, or even though you had a shitty one yesterday, like it's those types of things. It feels very weird, very uncomfortable to say it out loud. But
Yeah.
I find that when you say it out loud, it restructures your brain and it makes your mentality
Exactly.
stronger and it's very positive. So I know it's not weird, but it is a really weird feeling, especially in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that weirdness kind of just gets rubbed away with how it changes your mindset and your perspective on daily things. So yeah, just like my favorite one, I think I don't chase, I attract. That's one
Hmm.
of the things that I say all the time, especially if I'm feeling really antsy about something and I'm not keeping the peace. I kind of remind myself, listen, good things come to those who wait.
Hmm.
You don't chase after things. Things come to you, all that type of stuff. So I do a lot of those. And yeah, you're beautiful, you're smart, those cute ones. I don't do them in the mirror talking to myself, but I do talk to myself a lot. So yeah, but I
Yeah.
know a lot of people do like doing that, talking to yourself in the mirror and doing the affirmations. It's very strong because you're basically looking at yourself while you're saying it, and it makes it even more real.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a cool technique that I haven't tried, but affirmations I think is kind of one of my favorite things because there's a lot of power in the tongue, a lot of power in your words.
For
So
sure.
it creates the reality that you're living in. So if you're constantly talking yourself down, then that's why things are going to feel gloomy and chaotic and glummy. So you kind of want to flip that, make it a little bit better, more positive, and you'll be surprised how quickly things can change because you really have to feel it. It's not just saying it. You have to like
No,
believe it because when you truly believe it, you'll see how things just kind of transform for you. So,
I agree so strongly with that. That is
mm-hmm.
something that get being fully transparent. That is something my therapist has been like really pushing on to me. I shouldn't say pushing on to me.
Yes.
She's great. I love her. But it
Advocating.
is something that
Yes.
she's really, really advocating for
Mm-hmm.
and really, really having me enforce in my day-to-day life. And it
Yes.
is something that, like you said, the first few times you do it, you're kind of like, this is really weird. This feels
Yeah.
weird. I'm always so quick to be like, oh my God, yeah, do it to like everyone around me. And then when I do it, I'm
Exactly.
like, this is so weird. So I feel
Exactly.
exactly what you meant by like,
Yep.
it is kind of weird because when you do it at first, you're like, this feels, dare I say, dumb. Like it feels odd. Like, why am I
Yes.
doing this?
Exactly.
But then over time, like you said, it's you start to notice that little bit of shift inside of you wherever you feel that, whether that's in your mind, whether that's in your throat, in your chest, in
Hmm.
your stomach, like
Exactly.
whatever it
Yes.
is, you kind of start to feel a difference in it
Hmm.
where you're like, oh my God, wait, this is actually, it feels like a relief or a release of some sort where you're like, okay, I actually feel a difference. Like I feel good in this, which is, I feel like when you hit that point, it only gets better. So
Exactly.
I love that
Exactly.
one.
Yes. That one is definitely my favorite because what you're speaking to yourself in your mind, it's a very strong factor.
No, I love that. That's great.
Hmm. Okay, I was gonna say cleanses, smoke outs, just like the sage. I don't really use sage that much anymore, just given how it's gone extinct or it's going into extinct. So I think the last time I purchased sage was probably like before 2020, and I just have used that very sparingly. But there are like other ones. I think there's lemongrass, and then there's other ones like the what do you call
Is
it?
it
Oh
like
my gosh.
Palo Santo or
Palo
something?
Santos,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
stick, and then incense sticks
Oh,
as
you can
well
do that with
too.
incense as well.
Yes, because they'll have the ones that are like set for certain intentions. So like they'll have one for
Oh,
elevation or equilibrium or protection. So like they're like have the smoke is supposed to have that intention in there, especially if you
wow.
kind of go with that intention. Yeah, so I'll do smoke outs like that, especially around like sometimes the moon phases, so like full moons, new moons,
Mm-hmm.
or whenever I'm feeling like a little bit crummy because it's kind of what we talked about offline about feeling people's energy or like kind of taking on other people's energy. I find that like if I'm on the road a lot or I'm engaging with a lot of people, there will be moments where start to feel like really dull and down. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, it's time for me to do a little clean out, little smoke out type situation. So
Yeah.
there'll be like I'll probably do that a couple times out of the month to just reset myself, kind of keep things clean and just like, yeah, more aligned to what I want it to be.
Hmm.
And then when it comes to that as well too, it's kind of just like working up my discernment a little bit more. So kind of just working on my intuition, not questioning things too much, just leading with that. Yeah, it helps with just not everything's gonna make sense to you in the moment.
Hmm.
A lot of the things that happen, you kind of have to go off of feelings, and then you'll find like in the long run, okay, that's why that happened. And I find that when I find myself doing that, my intuition grows a little bit stronger, your discernment grows a little bit stronger as well too. So it allows you to kind of navigate in the world a little bit better, where your energy is a little bit more protected. So it's like, I don't know, I'm more mindful of where I put myself or who I engage myself with or how I speak to certain people, how I discuss certain things that are happening with my life. Like I'm a little bit more picky and choosy when it comes to that nowadays. I've seen a difference of how that's made in my life, making it a little bit more peaceful and a little bit more positive because it's now I'm being a little bit more smart or a little bit more strategic with the way that I'm moving in the world because you never know who's out there. You never know, what people's intentions are with
Or
you
what they're thinking.
and what they're
It's
thinking
tough.
exactly. These days, it's become very, I don't know, a little bit scary, but at the end of the day, it's nothing to be scared of if you just keep your discernment or just keep stuck with your intuition and just knowing, you know what, this is
Yeah.
good for me because I feel that it's good for me. And I may
Yeah.
not understand that right now, but in the end, something will reveal itself to show me that that made sense. So that's kind of a way that I kind of maintain my daily activities of just maintaining the peace within myself and just around me as well too.
That's amazing. I think especially
Yeah.
with the last one you said, I found something for me that I've been definitely working on in a similar sense to
Mm-hmm.
is just like that discernment piece that you're talking about is definitely again picking and choosing what you're choosing to share with certain people.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are very, very few people in my life who know everything all the time because
Right.
it's like those are the people. But then there are other people that are still very close to me
Mm-hmm.
and we share a lot of things with each other, but it's like
Yep.
we don't got to share everything with each other and no one's going to take
Exactly.
offense if we're not sharing every single thing with each
Exactly.
other, which is really a beautiful thing. But going off of that, like really practicing self validation or being able to affirm in yourself and really,
Yes.
really like be grounded in your
Yes.
opinion, wants, your needs,
Yep.
whatever it may be.
Yep.
That is like a whole other side to it that I could go on for ever and ever.
Oh my gosh,
But
my
that is
favorite.
like, it's,
Yes.
it is such an important piece in that as well.
If you don't have that, you will fall for anything. That's a man
Yes.
that you stand for nothing, fall for anything.
Hmm.
That to me is exactly what you're speaking about. And if you don't have that self-doubt validation, if you can't seek that internal peace within yourself and being comfortable within yourself and sitting in silence and not being all active and outside,
Hmm.
yeah, you won't be able to be strong enough to kind of have that willpower to get through certain storms and certain weathers because you're always looking for someone to lead the way for you and no one else can lead you in your life other than yourself. People can tell
Exactly.
you things until they go blue in the face, and you can apply that to your life until you go blue in the face, and you still may not get the same results. So it's like at that point in time, what is the point of sharing so many things to look for that round of applause, or what is the point of asking or sharing what you're going through to ask for so many differing opinions when they may not work for you. So sometimes it's kind of like you're just best to barrel within
Hmm.
and speak to your higher powers. If you pray, pray. If you
Yeah.
don't pray, speak to yourself or learn your higher self if that's what you believe in. If you believe in the
Hmm.
universe, writing things down and making wishes to the universe, there's so many different ways that you could do it internally without having to always outwardly ask for that support or seek that validation as well too, because that it
Yeah.
may not lead you down the road that you are looking to go down. So yes, I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
No.
definitely something I've learned. And I think that's another thing too that took a very strong transition. Like I would say 2019, 2020 for me and my social media, where I was sharing everything and I
Hmm.
wanted to, be in the mix and talk to people about what's going on in my life and oh my God, this, that, and the third. And it's like after a while, it just I noticed how draining it became because now
Ooh, that's
everybody felt
real.
that they wanted access to or they had access to my life. And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I couldn't really complain because I gave people access. So it's like
Yeah.
at that point in time, I'm now compromising my peace, compromising my tranquility, compromising the relationships and the things that I hold dear to my life
Hmm.
because of the fact that I'm just looking for that outward validation. So it kind of, I don't know, my frontal cortex, they call it or something, kicked
You're
in,
like, it has developed. It's
right?
here.
Like at post 25, I'm just like, yeah, we're maturing here. Not everything has to be out there. There are things that, whatever, things are still posted, or things are still discussed. I'm not saying to not do that, but I'm just saying that there are, it's like picking your battles. It's choosing
Yep.
certain things are not worth it and certain things are worth it. You kind of just have to see what it is for you, not for anybody else.
Mhm.
So it's just always keeping that into the back of my mind as well as the forefront of my mind because I don't want to jeopardize my peace and I don't want anything to ruin that. And I find that when you are private and when you have that discernment and when you have your understanding of self, you don't necessarily have to keep doing stuff like that, which I think is cool. So,
No, that's amazing. I feel like I
yeah.
can definitely relate to a lot of what you just said.
Yes.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier in your sort of like practices or tasks was really being, I guess, in alignment or at least having that awareness of like different moon phases or of, being
Mhm.
in tune with the universe and certain signs that might be coming your way. So this got me thinking because something I know we've talked about a ton and I think gets a very interesting wrap online is the whole concept of astrology.
Mhm.
And there's almost like a formed opinion about it either being this really cool thing or this really intense thing. And I've always sort of been in the middle of it until you introduced a new side of it to me. And that kind of changed up my mindset about it being like, okay, this could be something really cool to learn more about. So, would you be open
Mhm.
to sharing a little bit about this journey for you and what encouraged you to get into this?
Yes. Now, disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. I am not an astrologist. I am not a guru in this at all. This is just personal opinion, personal experience. But astrology is such a huge concept, and I think when it comes to me, I just boil it down to define divine intervention or divine timing or things
Mm.
always happen for a reason. The cosmic, the stars, the universe, something always aligns. There's always a reason for why things happen. I've always lived my life like that before I even knew what astrology was. That was always a
Oh,
thing
okay.
for me. Yeah, to just like everything happens for a reason. Like however it will go, it will go. Like
It's
there's
kind of out of
nothing I
your
could do
hands.
about it.
Yeah.
Exactly. The only thing I could do is just rock with it and rock with it the best way that I can. So that was always a thing for me. And then it came into like the zodiacs and like, oh, when were you born? And oh, you're a Libra. Oh, so am I.
Yep.
Like that's kind the surface level stuff. That's kind of what it was for me. Yeah, in high school that was a big thing for me. I was really, really into that. The zodiacs and the signs. And the reason why it wasn't about the horoscopes and it wasn't about the daily things that they tell you about, oh, for the Libra today, you're gonna have this, that, and the third. It wasn't really that for me. It was that the behaviors and characteristics associated with each sign were so on point for the amount of people that I met that had the exact same sign. To the point where I didn't even
Oh,
have to ask people what sign they were. I just knew before they could tell me. So it's like when
wow.
that
You
started
could read
happening,
that.
yeah, when that started happening for me, I'm like, okay, that is not a coincidence. Like these are different people. It's not people from the same family. It's not any of that. These are different people that when they tell me their sign and I look at how their behavior is, I'm like, okay, yeah,
It
you are
adds
that
up.
through and through. It does. And for me, obviously, it's not just, as I said, it's a huge concept. There's the big three, and then you have the
Mhm.
six, and there's the rising, and then there's the sun, and then there's so many. But just like the surface level of that in the beginning for me was a thing where I was like, oh my gosh, like this can't be a coincidence. Like this actually explains a lot for me. And it's not like I was using it as like a way to be like, oh, you're that, so like I'm gonna treat you this way. I found that it was a tool and a resource for me to know how to deal with people. I found like it kind of gave
Oh,
you a little guideline or a little slight blueprint. Obviously, it's not going to be 100% because again, we're very complex individuals. It's not just the paper and it's not just that, especially when you look into the deeper concepts of astrology and you look at the whole plane and like the whole situation of like people's planets when it comes to like their actual birth chart. That's a different conversation. I don't know too much about that, but in that sense, it's kind of when you get that surface level understanding, I found that that is kind of what I noticed when I found things out about when they were born and what their sign was. So I'm like, oh, that's a little bit interesting. And then I got into the crystals. Now, the crystals happened for me when I graduated and I was working in retail. I
Hmm.
started like my full-time position at that point, and I was becoming a manager, and my mom gave me a black tourmaline, and she's like, you should wear this on you. And I'm like, what am I
Oh.
wearing this black stone for me for? She's like, no, no, no. I'm telling you, like this stone is just like it rids negative energy, keeps you grounded. It's for
Oh.
your roots chakra, all this type of stuff. So once I started to get into the crystals, I used to wear a black tourmaline in my bra at work, yes. And it did wonders. Now, it could be placebo, it could be my mind. Either way, your mind is very strong and it
It
creates the
is.
reality. So I knew it was working and it was working for me. So
That's all that
that's
matters.
how exactly. So the crystals came into play, and then I started to learn the metaphysical properties behind the crystals, which also
Oh.
aligned with the zodiac signs because certain crystals work best for certain zodiac signs. And then I realized, oh my gosh, all of this is connected. So I just find for me, it just the way that things aligned based off of a person's birth chart based off of the crystals. All of these things kind of just rope together, and all of those things I kind of used as different tools and resources to navigate in my life, whether it be how to navigate an experience with a person,
Mhm.
or okay, what do I want this couple months to look like? Or if I'm going to leave my house, maybe I want to carry around these set of stones because of what I'm going to get into. So it
Yeah.
became like a little way of like how I navigated through life because of the fact that I was going through a pretty major transition, especially around COVID in 2020.
Yeah.
I relied heavily on it where I was like fully immersed. And I found that was even divine timing as well too, because at that point in time, there wasn't much for us to do.
Mm.
And at that point in time, the world was flipped upside down.
Yep.
And I didn't know what was left, what was right, up and down. I didn't know where I was going.
Hmm.
And just fully immersing myself into that, I felt like it was different to a religion where it wasn't so cutthroat. Like
Okay.
with astrology, to me, is kind of very similar to religion, but obviously they're very, very different in the
For
sense of
sure.
like astrology and religion you could use there's certain set of practices
Hmm.
and there's certain set of beliefs and there's certain set of things that you do on a daily basis. And for me, when I grew up in my childhood, religion was heavily influence of topic in my life. But for me, it just wasn't clicking. There's just something about it when it
Hmm.
came to institutions, religious institutions, and faith. I
Hmm.
was always going to rely on my faith rather than a religious institution. So for me,
Mm.
that's when I realized, okay, religion's kind of not for me. Like I can understand it in the sense of, yes, I do believe in God, but I have a
Mhm.
different relationship with him. And
Yeah.
that's kind of when I deviated or I transitioned into astrology, where it was like, okay, there's the universe, there's a higher being, there's someone that's controlling this. It could be a person named God, but it could also be something else. But either way,
Yeah.
I know that something is predetermined. Everyone is on earth for a reason. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing for a reason.
Mhm.
So for me, I felt like astrology was a less cutthroat way of understanding the world that way with
For
its
sure.
little, magical, spiritual little floofy
Properties.
stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of felt that the when I got into the crystals, that was kind of a huge point of life for me because that's kind of how we work together in the sense of I was becoming an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
got into the market, selling jewelry, making body butters. All of that was happening during COVID. And I think all of that was building based off of the fact that I was learning so much about astrology and I was relying heavily on that to kind of like, okay, what's the next move? But the
Yeah.
thing that I found with astrology is that it was never really giving me the next move. It was just leading me towards a certain type of route that was
Hmm.
creating all these types of experiences. And that's when I finally realized, holy shit, yes, everything is actually happening for a reason because of the ways that things just opened up itself and also how it kind of just didn't seem to be a smooth transition in the moment.
Hmm.
But if I look back now, a lot of things just kind of aligned itself pretty perfectly while I was learning so much about it. So it's kind of like that one thing where I always tell people, honestly, you kind of just have to pick and choose with everything.
Yeah.
You're gonna like this and you may not like that. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It
Yeah.
just means that not everything has to apply to you. So I feel like astrology is such a big conversation, especially with the way that it's been like perversed or stretched or even diluted nowadays,
Hmm.
especially with TikTok, all the different things that you see on TikTok with the videos and the readings and all this
There's a
type of stuff.
lot.
If you're seeing this, it's for a reason, and it could be for a
Yeah.
definite reason, but also
Might
let's
just be
not
the
forget the
algorithm.
algorithm. Thank you.
It might just, hey, I don't know.
Thank you.
It
Thank
might
you.
just be.
So, yeah, that also again goes back to that discernment.
I love everything you just mentioned about really taking on that sort of forward thinking way of astrology in a sense, where like you kind of made that comparison to either like religion or, believing in something of a greater good in general,
Mhm.
really.
Yep.
And so I really like that because I feel like a lot of people get very timid at the idea of submerging themselves into learning something new, especially something as big as astrology. So the next thing I want to ask you is a little loaded. So I want to, feel free to share whatever comes to mind. But if
Hmm.
there's anything that you would share or say to someone, if you were to have someone else open their mind to this concept, or if someone came to you and said, I'm really interested in this, where do I start? Like, what do you think you would share with them?
Yeah, definitely is one of those things where it's like, as I said, it's so big. You could definitely take a concept, chew on it for a bit, and see how you feel. Like in the aspect of your just understanding yourself, I think it's kind of learning yourself was kind of the starter for me as well when it came to astrology of like, oh, what does it mean for me to be born on October 1st at 7:37 in the morning? Like there has to be a reasoning for that, and then you get into your birth chart and then you get an understanding and then you notice that what your big six is, and then you're like, oh, that's why I tick the way that I tick. It can start just as little as that, just learning yourself or learning relationships, how to engage with other people.
Hmm.
You can start by learning crystals. That's always a fun place to start because you get to learn about the rocks from the world and what properties they carry with that, because also those are pretty, yeah, they could be a little bit wacky, but when you hold a crystal, you could feel like its vibration. Like it's a different type of feeling when you get it into your hand. And I think that's
Hmm.
like one thing where, I don't know, if you just if you let the cuckoo make sense, you'd be shocked at what, I don't know, what starts to resonate for you. So yeah, crystal is like a really cool thing as well too if you want to just change the energy that's around you. A lot of the TikTok readings, yes, they could be a little bit weird, but there's been a few times where they've kind of been on brand or they've been on point for what's currently going on in your life. So that's something that you could kind of just sit with. Readings, I'm a little bit iffy with those. I'm not really one to recommend because I just haven't done it myself. But definitely if that's something that tickles your fancy, you could definitely get into that as well too. It's just for me, it's very, again, discernment. You don't know what people are telling you. You
Yeah.
could just be paying a service and that's just how they have to make their money and they'll tell you anything. So that to
Yeah.
me is kind of where I'm a little bit iffy. But just the first three that I kind of stated in terms of like zodiac signs or your birth chart and crystals and even just like slight TikTok readings is kind of a good way. But I find that with astrology is kind of that thing where yeah, no pressure. I think a lot of things in life should be no pressure because at the end of the day, we're just being told what people has been told and nothing has really been proven. So it's like you have all this information and we're in an information age where it's just information just coming to you, coming to you, coming to you. It could be
Yeah.
very overwhelming and it's like, okay, what can I believe in? And it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because at the end of the day, there will always be so many different people believing so many different things. So I find that I think you just have to, as the TikTok readings say, take what resonates, leave what doesn't,
Mm-hmm,
keep it
mm-hmm,
pushing. Because I feel like that definitely is something, going back to that whole thing where it's like a person that will fall for anything and stand for nothing. It's kind of that whole thing where it's like there's so much information. You could take all that information and put your whole brain in a slump. You'll go down a rabbit hole and
that
then
is
you'll find
very
no way to
true.
come out. And that's kind of like the surface level conversation about psychosis. I don't want to get into that, but that's
Mm,
kind of what
okay.
can go into that as well too, because there's so much information. You're getting told so many different things, and then your mind can be a very dark place if it gets out of control. So it's kind of like you don't want to lose yourself in the
Mm-hmm.
process of learning something different. So for me, it's kind of like, yeah, taking what truly resonates and not what everybody else is doing is the best way, I think, to kind of get into astrology, because I feel like it could apply to anything. And it's just such an accepting place as well, too, where it's just like you're doing things for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and in the process it also provides something for the greater good because you're truly living in your truth. And if you live in your truth, you don't bother anybody else while you're doing that. If everyone lives in their truth, everything can be very peaceful, but everybody is concerned about what everybody else is doing and being the best at this and being the biggest at this, and it's just a competition. It's us versus them. And
Wow,
that was
yeah.
something that I learned in communications in our degree. Everything's just been a dichotomy. There's always going to be that yin and yang,
Yep.
but they have to be there because, as you can see, it creates a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Without that, you won't have both. So it's kind of like you need it, but there's always a way to move with it because you kind of need both in order to survive. And it's just not getting sucked into one side too much.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of just like that whole taking what resonates with you and leaving what doesn't, because it's like you're living in your truth. It makes sense to you. It works with you. There should be no problems. In a simpler way, in a simpler life, that's how I wish for it to be. But I feel as though that's kind of how I live my life. You do you, I do me. All is well in the world of Brittany. So
I
I
adore
don't,
that.
right? Like
I love that so
yeah,
much.
for me, it's like just, I think, and astrology, I feel like just opens that up to you because it's kind of just like things are happening, things are always happening.
Hmm.
So, like, you exist, but you don't in the same sense. So, it's like, yeah, life really isn't all that serious because it's all intertwined with everything else. It's just like things are always going to divinely work itself out in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, always making sure that you're not losing yourself in the process as well too, which is cool.
That is so amazing and also so well put. One of the
Yeah.
things that really stood out to me about what you said was the whole idea of staying true to yourself and that being able to lead very much into like a peaceful and very just, mindful existence, like
Hmm.
having that sort of like autonomy over your own life. Because, like you said, it's very, very easy to lose yourself into something when you really open yourself up to it, sometimes in a way
Yep.
where it can be too much. So, I think in some of our conversations we've had before, I've confided in you about this idea of presenting yourself with more confidence and how to go about this. And I definitely think this is like a huge portion in that for sure.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, you are literally one of the best people I know at this, truly. And I'm not just saying that just to say that. I feel like there's so much to consider when it comes to thinking about how to present yourself more confidently, how you really want to show up in the world, how you want to show up for yourself, first and
Hmm.
foremost.
Hmm.
So, switching the gears a little bit to this, if there are one or two concepts here that come to mind for you, do you mind sharing a bit more about that?
Yes, I'm definitely not a poster girl for confidence. But I love that you see that or that you acknowledge that with me because I guess faking it till you make it is working.
You're killing it.
I guess it's working because yeah, honestly, I feel like that's what it is. It's confidence for me is like such an ironic concept because it's like everyone's faking it till they make it. Not everybody, no one knows what's going on here. Like
It's true.
I feel like Lil Uzi, like it's my third day out here. Like I don't, right? Like everybody is literally living life and faking it. Like they're just moving. They're just trying to make it make sense. They're just trying to make it work. So
Hmm.
I feel like confidence is just that way of like making it seem like it's working, but also it's falling into that delulu of, oh, I'm gonna make it seem like it's working, but it actually is working because you're being
Oh,
confident in the fact that, yeah, I can do
like
this.
this could happen.
Yeah, like
Hmm.
I can make this work, like it's kind of just faking the funk for a bit, which
Mm.
allows you to kind of get comfortable with it because it's like if I can fake it, I definitely can make it. Like obviously it's a learning process. You always get into that jive. So I feel like it's one of those things where you just fake it for a bit, but I think we all fake it for like forever because
For a
it
very long
not it
time.
will never life will never make sense. Something's always popping off.
Hmm.
So yeah, I feel
Hmm.
like you just have to be very adaptable and just I think the confidence will just come from being true to yourself. Like I know who I am and
Hmm.
I know how I'm going to react to the situation. So it doesn't matter what you're going to throw at me. I'm still gonna react the same way. I think that's kind of just how I navigate it. So yes, I may not know what this experience is actually going to be, but I am true in myself and knowing that I'm going to make it work. That's kind of how I go about it. Another thing as well for me that I like to do is I've been saying this probably from like, oh my God, middle school. And I remember I said this to one of my good friends, and she's like, oh my God, that's so morbid. But it's a true statement. And the
Okay.
statement is, you were born with yourself and you will die with yourself. So if you don't
Valid.
like yourself,
Hmm.
who are you gonna like? You're stuck with this
It's
person.
true.
Like there has nobody else in the world. Granted, my parents, and
Yes,
yes,
yes, of
obviously.
course.
But when I opened my eyes, I opened my eyes for myself. When I cried for myself. My first breath was for myself. My last breath will be for myself. So if I can't
Wow.
be confident in the life that I'm living, or if I can't be confident in the person that I'm showing up as every day, how am I going to be able to live with myself? I'm going to end up living a life that I'm going to regret because I did not live for myself. Who wants to live that kind of life? You only have one life to live. So you got to make it be the best that it can be for yourself. There's so many people in the world that you may ask them, oh, what's one thing that you regret? They may not regret anything, but they may wish that they have done something that they stopped themselves from doing because they didn't think it was a good idea.
That is such a good point because I
Yes.
mean, often in our own situations, like even with myself, I'm just like, I think back on some things that I did. Maybe it panned out in a positive way, maybe it panned out
Mhm.
in a different way that I really wasn't hoping for.
Mhm.
And in the long run, you think about it and you're like, oh, yeah, sometimes you're like, maybe that I still wish that went better, or I kind of
Yeah.
regret that. But on the other hand, if you don't do something like that, there's a sort
You'll
of
never know.
resentment where you're like,
Yep.
I wish I knew what happened with that. I very much live by in the recent years, there was this YouTuber that I watched often, and he unfortunately passed away, but he always had this saying that was, what if versus
Mhm.
oh well. So it's like I
Mhm.
would always rather be able to put myself in a situation, and if it goes well, oh well, great, it went well. If it doesn't go good, oh well, I tried, as opposed to being
Exactly.
like sitting there, what if I did this? What if I did this? What if I
Exactly.
tried this?
Exactly.
So very much, yeah, I very much have a similar train of thought to you with that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a thing of like I'm trying to make this life worth living, and
Hmm.
you can't make a life worth living if you're worried about how everybody else is going to perceive it. That
Hmm.
does not boost your confidence in believing in yourself and believing in the steps that you're taking and creating the life that you want. So for me, it's like always keeping that in the back of my mind, exactly what you said, trying things regardless of what anybody else is thinking about it or what anybody else is saying,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. What even your negative, your little negative person that's in your little head that's saying, "Oh, you can't do that, Brit. Like that's not gonna work." Screw you. Sit in the stands with the haters while I actually like it's not just an external struggle worried about other people's opinions, but it's also your own personal opinions as well too that are like the devil's advocate or just worrying about the bad stuff that's happening. So you don't end up regretting not taking that step as you said. So
Hmm.
it's like also keeping that in mind as well too when you're doing stuff because you just don't want your life passing you by and you don't want to be a spectator in your life either where you're just judging
Absolutely.
everything that's happening and you're not feeling it because it's like you didn't make the steps or you didn't make the actions or you didn't believe in yourself enough to like actually live your life and not just analyze it and critique it.
And that is honestly, I very much, yes, I can see in a
Yeah, right?
nutshell how like in middle school, first of all, if someone came up to me and told me that, I'd be like, they're wise beyond their years. Like she knows something I don't know. She knows something we all don't know. We all need to keep an eye on her because she's about to transcend. What is going
A
on?
lot of people, when I used to say it, I think a lot of people used to probably take it pretty selfish because it's like,
Mm.
yeah, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. I'm not saying that I don't care about how
No, no,
you
no.
feel about it, especially I'm not talking about decisions that impact other people's lives. I'm talking about decisions that impact my life.
Yeah,
Like, obviously, I'm going to worry about myself first
yeah,
because I'm my first priority.
of
Because when
course.
things go left, my cup needs to be filled in
Hmm.
order for me to pour into other people and support them. So for me, it's like, it's not selfish actually, because if I'm at the best where I'm supposed to be, and if my life is where it needs to be, I can help everybody else around me. I can give that little positive energy so they can be with me as well too. I'm not only looking out for myself, I'm trying to create a lifestyle that represents, oh my God, like how is she living life so,
Yeah,
it's not that big of a deal. Take it easy. You're living your life for yourself. Who cares? So it's not even like, oh, she's doing all these things. It's all great. It's no, she's doing all these things for herself. I should start doing stuff for myself as well too and see
hmm.
how my life turns around. So it's like
Wow.
it may look like it's selfish, but it's actually just showing you how to put yourself first.
Yeah.
Self-preservation is like the most important thing in my personal opinion. Like I will never be able to show up for someone else if I cannot show up for myself.
It's very true. And also
Yeah.
like the whole idea of like that preservation, I think couples so nicely with just self-awareness because
Yes.
if you're not aware of your own wants, needs, preferences, what you're even feeling or thinking inside, again, being aware of that preservation and what you really are capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't know those things, and how are you going to be really like present in anything you do or showing up in
Yes.
any space authentically for yourself or
Yep.
for anybody else? Like
Yep.
it definitely is interesting how there's the two totally differing sides to that.
No, 100%. Definitely coupled really, really well.
Mhm. Well, I have one more final question.
Yes.
And this is something I like to chat about on this show in general. It's the
Mm-hmm.
concept of imposter syndrome. And this is something that can occur, I think, in literally any moment in life, whether this is career
Yeah.
based, within relationships, even day to day. I think it's something that ties really closely to confidence, especially, which we just
Yes.
touched on so heavily. So I think with that, it can be hard to feel good about yourself. When this kicks into full gear, it's like kind of like forget feeling good about myself. Like, what the heck am I doing here? Do you have any advice in your own life and in this instance for yourself on how to push that to the side? Because you just made that really good point about like if there is that self-doubt or like that inner devil's advocate, like you sit up
Mm-hmm.
there with like the people that don't care for it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know for you, like, is there any advice for you on how you push that to the side and just continue to present yourself in the way that you truly wish to and want to?
Yes, for me, everybody has imposter syndrome. I don't think that's ever going to be something that will ever be able to go away because life is always popping up with something new that you have to learn that you never experienced before.
Yeah.
So you go back into being a novice, building yourself back up to being intermediate or advanced. Like I feel like you're always rebuilding yourself that way. So I always have imposter syndrome, but I think the way that I combat it to not see it as a bad thing is the fact that you will never be in a room you are not called to be in. Experiences are
Oh.
not given to you unless they were supposed to be for you. Like nothing passes you by without it actually being for you. So for me, it's like you're supposed to be here. You're supposed to be in this moment. You're supposed to have that job. You're supposed to have that experience. Why not you?
No, that's very valid.
These are the questions that I ask myself on a daily basis because it's like, if I'm not worthy, what makes me not worthy? I talk to myself like if it's a homegirl because it's like,
But
where
you
are
really
you?
got to,
You have
though. You
to.
really, this
You
is funny
have to
because
talk to yourself like if you're your best friend. Yes.
yeah, because we literally just said earlier in this episode about how the whole thing with affirmations. how
Yes,
that can feel uncomfortable. But on the other
very.
hand of it, like it's going to sound crazy, but like people, all of us talk to ourselves, let's be real. We all do
100%.
this in whatever aspect that might come around and I don't know.
Hmm.
But I love that you just openly like own that. You're like, I talk to myself and I'm like, okay, but if this is not for you,
Yeah.
then
Who is
why?
it for? Yeah.
Why is it not for you? Who's it for if it's not for
Right.
you? Funny how a lot of the times too, like I feel like there's not even a direct answer as to like, wait, why is this not for me?
Right.
Crazy.
You will never get an answer for that because it was given to you for a reason. So it's like me reminding things that moments will never pass you by
Hmm.
will always allow me to walk in my confidence to know, yes, I am supposed to be here. Yes, I'm supposed to be experiencing this right now. Yes, I deserve this.
Hmm.
And it's just that those self-affirming moments that you need to have within that to be like, why wouldn't you experience that? You have the capacity, you have the ability.
Yeah.
Look at all the experiences that you have under your tool belt.
Hmm.
You're ready for this. And you still feel like you're not ready because you're going off of trauma of
Yeah.
the moments that you weren't ready. Because
Yeah.
I feel like you're always in that moment of like that freeze or flight, even though you've
Hmm.
been doing something like constantly, because you're always scared of that moment where you drop it.
Yep.
You never
Yep.
know when the ball is gonna drop. I've always been like that. I'm always wondering when the shoe's gonna drop, like when is it gonna
Yes.
happen? And it's like honestly, even if it does drop, you could pick it back up. Like
But it's
you're good.
crazy, like, because thinking about it, and you even said, like, we go moving off of our past traumas.
Hmm.
For me personally, sometimes I feel like, again, if you're starting something new, if you're doing something you've already been doing, you're doing the thing regardless. But it's
Right.
kind of like there's either the trauma that you've had from your past, or there's almost like a pre-trauma. Like you said, you're so scared you're going to drop that shoe.
Yes.
Something's going to fall apart.
Hmm.
Something's going to combust. What's going on? What am I going to do when that happens? And it's kind of just like, you just pick it up and you keep going. But it is so, so daunting in that moment
It is.
before you
It is.
have that self like discourse or conversation where you're like, yeah, no, it's not that deep. Like you carry on.
Exactly. And it's not that deep to me is so important because honestly speaking, life is not serious. If you sit back and look at the stuff that's happening,
Yeah.
scary how comical it truly is
Hmm.
to the point where I stop and I'm like, okay, where's Ashton? Like, when is he coming out?
Where
Like,
are the
okay,
cameras?
camera, like, like I'm looking for the break, like the fourth wall. I'm breaking the fourth wall every day because I'm like, are you seeing this? Like, what's happening here? So for
I
me, it's
love
like
that.
I literally take life for a movie, and I'm like, honestly, it's not that serious. Seriously speaking, you can change your perspective, which will change your reality. It really isn't that serious. A lot of people get worked up in the little things, the details,
Yes.
when we have to keep in mind the bigger picture.
Hmm.
We have
Hmm.
to keep in mind the basic core needs that we need as well too. There's only a limited things that we need on this world to live a very nice life. People forget that when they focus on the details. So when you boil it all the way back down to it's really not that serious, you
Yeah,
don't really feel like an imposter because it's like you're just a basic human being. That's what you are. You're just trying to live. You're just trying to get by. You're just trying to
that's
take it
true.
day by day. Like you're just trying to survive.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day will end. There's nothing you could do about it. So why make it seem like it's a big problem?
I
Keep
so
pushing.
badly want to clap, but I'm like, that'll just throw off all the audio. And
No.
there's been like 3 points where you were just talking where I'm like, oh my God. And then I stop myself. I'm like, I raise my hands and I'm like, wait, I can't.
Oh my
That's
goodness. Yeah,
that's such a great way of looking at it.
yeah, like it's come to the point where I've taken so many things in my life so seriously to the
Hmm.
point where like I've caused panic attacks. I've
Hmm.
caused anxiety, like I've caused like so much stress. And then when I make it on to the other side, it's like, what was the drama for? So when I
Yeah.
start to realize the amount of times that I actually make it to the other side, I start to figure out this is the game of life. It's ebbs and flows. There will always be ups and downs. It
Hmm.
will never be rainbows and butterflies. And when I found this out, it broke my heart, but it makes things so much more real and so much more calming because it's like honestly, you can only do so much that you can do in a day, and you
Hmm.
can only control what you can control. Everything else is just going to pan out the way that it pans out.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, you start to get into that situation where it's like, okay, when everything does pan out, it actually pans out pretty freaking good. And I'm gonna believe that.
Hmm.
Life is like a roller coaster. Some people don't like roller coasters, but you have to go on the ride.
Some of us
Unfortunately,
got seat belts and some of us were just on the seat.
exactly. You're just on the seat. And I truly feel like life is a roller coaster. Not everybody likes to go on it,
Hmm.
but you kind of have to in order to have the experience. And then
Hmm.
sometimes you'll go on the ride and you'll be like, oh my God, this was so great. Let me do this again. That means it was a great experience. Or you may just get off that ride and be like, you know what? I'm never going on that roller coaster again. Let me go to
Hmm.
another one.
It was a one
That's
and done.
basically one and done
Yeah.
situation. I experienced it. Thank you so
Hmm.
much. Got that on my belt, on my roster. I'm moving on. Don't want to touch that ever again. Like literally,
Yeah.
that's I take it as like an amusement park because it's like things are happening and it's like one moment it can look so great
Hmm.
and it probably is, but you don't know what's happening in the background. And then one moment it could look so bad and it probably is, but you still don't know what's happening in the background. Like it's always going into this crazy cycle and circle. And
Mm.
with a cycle and circle, there's an upwards point, a peak, and there's also a plummet. You just have to keep swimming. Like you just have
Yeah.
to keep enjoying it. And I really just like to say and see life as a movie.
Hmm.
And I want to make it the best movie ever and rock
And
out with
that's
it.
it.
Literally, like what else can we do? What are we doing here? And since no one is telling me, I'm gonna keep doing what I do and have fun with it because honestly, I don't want to stress myself out. Like it's not worth it in the end.
Exactly.
Especially when you're stressing yourself out over something you don't know. And
Hmm.
that's the worst because you'll
Hmm.
keep spinning, which creates even more confusion. And I truly feel like when you spin on something, it manifests exactly what you're spinning
A
in the wrong
hundred
way.
percent. Ties into like exactly what you said earlier about perspective and really
Yeah.
having more control over that than you think you might, especially
Mhm.
in like a rough time. It's
Mhm.
so easy to just like fixate on the thing that's bad or the series of bad things that have gotten you to maybe where you are, as opposed
Mhm.
to just kind of being like, okay, this has happened. I can think about why it happened, but like I gotta keep going. The way you just worded all of that was honestly so good.
But literally like you're in the process
Hmm.
that like you can't even really take too much time to kind of deconstruct it or to like really understand, oh my God, what's happening? You just have to like, okay, cool, keep moving.
Hmm.
While you're doing that, you don't even have the opportunity to act like an imposter. Because it's like
You're so right.
you have to keep moving. Like you have to keep adapting. You have to keep seeing like, holy shit, okay, this happened. Okay, no worries. What's next? Like,
Like we
what else you
move.
got? Imposter. I don't know, man. It's such a weird. I think like we're so in our head about every little thing,
Hmm.
but I feel like we're focused on the wrong stuff. Like you could be in your
For
head,
sure.
but not in the way that we're conditioned to be in our head. So it's a lot of unlearning,
It
like
definitely is. And it's
relearning and
something that is
unlearning. Yeah.
not, work that just happens overnight. But
No.
it's something that, like you said, practicing these things over time, really
Yes.
taking that time to sit with yourself, understand your needs, really
Mhm.
look at the way that you might be moving right now, kind of like assess that and see, is this something that's productive for me? Is it
Exactly.
something that I think is productive for me because people around me like it? Or is it actually working for
Exactly.
me? Like you have brought up good and like key points at that
Thank
too.
you.
I
Thank
cannot
you.
thank you enough for all of this.
Oh, you're welcome.
This has
You're
been
welcome.
so good.
It's been very good because it's exactly yeah, I it's something that I think about every day, especially with our generation as well too. We're hitting almost our 30s,
Eh.
you know? So it's
I
like
heard they're our best years. I don't know if people are saying that because we're getting close, but I'm gonna believe them.
right. But it's like when you like think about stuff like that, it's a lot of like unlearning stuff because it's like everyone's timing is different. You see so many things happening with
Exactly.
everybody else. So it's like, yeah, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, it's I have to keep this in the back of my mind every day because it's like 30s could be the best years of your life, but
Mm-hmm.
are you making the right steps to make sure that it is the best
Oh.
of your life for you, not
Mm.
just to be in the 30s
Everybody
crew?
around you. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it could kind of be a little bit scary because when you end up doing these things that you practice, you start to realize how much you deviate from the whole of society because not everybody is acting the same way as you or
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the same things that you are. And then you start to feel like, oh, am I being a pessimist? Like, is this a realist? But it's a lot of that because then it makes you feel like you're on your own little planet. You're seeing everybody do these things, and it's like, but that doesn't resonate with me. And
No,
it's like, okay, does that mean that it's wrong? No. I may end up getting to the exact same end result, and the end result is to enjoy life and create
exactly.
the best life as possible. So that will look different for anybody involved, and you just have to keep things like that in mind while you're going through all this. And it definitely deconstructs the absolute truths that we've been told, book idea
What we
of
think
what
we
we should
know.
be doing. Yes,
Yep.
it's definitely one of those things because it's like that's kind of what I think, just to lead back into that imposter syndrome again.
Hmm.
You only feel that way because of the fact that you're looking at what everybody else is doing. So you're like, oh,
Yep.
I'm trying to hold the same standard because this is how I see them doing it. That's why imposter syndrome will make you like eat away at yourself because it's like you're trying to hold yourself at standards that are not genuine to you. It's what's considered the best for society as well too. But yeah, it's like good to just figure out, what do you need to do? What does Carmen need to do for her life? What does Brittany, like, we need to have those types of conversations with
Hmm.
ourselves rather than these group forums and what society thinks and all these things. We gotta get within, understand ourselves because our internal clocks and our internal biology is truly can be the blueprint for everything.
Hmm.
I find just getting into this stuff. So I'm like, you can learn a lot from sitting with yourself and having those deep internal conversations and
Absolutely.
like, yeah, even relearning yourself as well too. All your
Hmm.
like your demons, your bad parts, your weaknesses, understanding that, doing the shadow work, trying to relearn yourself, like those things as well. All the experiences that you had that were deemed traumatic, unpacking those to kind of get what are the little nuggets there? What can you take from that so you don't fall back into those types of patterns? It's like it's a lot of things that you have to keep into the back of your mind, but it also just makes you feel pretty calm because it's like I'm only doing this to better myself.
No, that's
So,
so important. That you,
yeah.
again, you just shared like so many things that I think a lot of people might not learn until much later in their life. So
Yeah.
like I think that's amazing. And I cannot thank you
Thank
enough for
you.
sharing that insight because truly, I mean, so much of this is stuff that I think about doing. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to
Hmm.
sit down and do this. But now I'm like, you lit a fire under me. So now I'm like, now I gotta go
Yes.
do it. So thank you.
No. You're welcome. You're welcome. Anytime.
I know I've said thank you like 50 times, but genuinely, I can't explain how much I appreciate it. Because being open to sharing this kind of stuff and talking about this stuff very candidly, not a lot of people are very comfortable doing. So
Yes.
thank you so, so
You're
much.
welcome. No, thank you. I haven't spoken about it like this in a very long time, so it's been very refreshing. So I
Mhm.
appreciate it. So it's been really, really fun, and you've asked really, really good questions. Really made me think about things. So I appreciate that.
Oh, that
Thank
means
you.
so much. If
No, your questions
there's,
are on point.
thank
Loved it.
you. If there's anything that you want to leave any listeners with, whether that's socials that you want to share, or maybe even just like a message you want to share before the end of the episode.
Honestly, just keep doing you, booze. Live the best life that you can. Honestly, yeah, just be present. Be present. Life is moving very, very fast. Time is going really, really quickly. I don't know where the hell time is going. She needs to slow down, slow it down. But just with that happening, it's always good to remember to just be in the moment, foster and solidify the relationships that you want to solidify, live or create a career that you want to create, or just get a job that you need to pay the life that you want to live. You don't even have to
Mhm.
find a career or a passion. Just find something to give you some good coins so you could live that life. So yeah, man, just do what you gotta do. I guess that's like my biggest thing.
That was so beautifully put. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Don't
I
take it too
appreciate it.
seriously.
No, I
Yeah.
will. I'll take it to
Yeah.
heart. I love that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If you're still here, then I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day or night. Again, whenever you're listening to this, I hope it's been wonderful. I just want to say I really appreciate you listening and taking that time out and sharing it with me and with Brittany, who was so amazing to record with. I know I said thank you already, but just once more, I really want to say thank you so much to Brittany for being so open minded and willing to come on and share her perspective on a ton of different things, but just being a really, really wonderful guest. I enjoyed this so much, and I think it's just been such a cool experience getting to have her on here. Honestly, anytime I get to have any friends on here, I feel very, very excited, and I'm always really excited to share the episodes with you guys. So I really hope you enjoyed this. And again, thank you so much to Brittany. If you have any other topics or specific things that you guys really want to hear me talk about, or even have any guests in mind, or if you yourself would like to be on the show, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at the Trying Times Podcast. I would absolutely love to chat more on there and bring some of that energy onto the show as well. So, yeah, that's everything for today. I really appreciate you. I hope you're having a wonderful day or night, and we'll chat again soon, okay? Bye.